We'll get started here. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
It is Monday, February 6th. What happened to January? That went fast. 2023. On my right is Commissioner Kevin Cook, who represents District 2. On my left is Commissioner Aaron Mays, who represents District 3. And I'm Bill Rippon, and I represent District 1. Today, the first thing we have on our agenda is Stormont Vale Event Center. And Kellen's going to bring us up to speed on some changes out there, some updates.
Yeah, good morning, Commissioners. Kellen Seitz, OVG 360 in the Stormont Vale Event Center. Going to run through a few things today. First off, we'll start with the food and beverage transition, with OVG Hospitality taking over the food and beverage management, and talk through some of the concepts, some of the work we've done already, and then some of the things we're looking to expand upon in the future. And then we'll kind of move into current events that we have on sale, and then upcoming events, as well as all the events we've been working on for 2023. So as we start with food and beverage, I wanted to highlight, this is a pretty long document. I'll probably skip over a couple pages here, but just kind of touch base on a few of the things that we'll have kind of rolling out. And the place I wanted to start with is the concepts that we're looking to roll out from the concession side in Landon Arena. So as you know, over the past number of years, and over the past year in particular, we went out to, or the county elected to go out to bid for food and beverage services, and we were fortunate enough to be able to perform and be awarded that line of business at the facility. And one of the things we really wanted to focus on was diversifying the menu offerings and the different types of concession concepts at the facility. So as we go through, I'm going to kind of try to jump to those pages first, and then we'll kind of go backwards from there. So give me just a second as I skip through some of this stuff, and then we'll come back to it here in a second. So some of the concepts we're looking at rolling out are a little bit more, again, diversified menu offerings. So in Exhibition Hall, we'll be rolling out what we call a Heritage Deli, which is a little bit different concept than your traditional concession food. So moving away from the burgers and fried foods and chicken tenders, and bringing in a little bit different options for some of those events that take place on a flat floor exhibition trade show type space, right? So salads and healthy sandwiches and different menu items that include, fruits and vegetables, which our parents like, right? And this is a concept that we're rolling out inside Exhibition Hall. That Exhibition Hall concession stand consists of 4 different bay roll-up windows with, I believe, 8 with the ability to go up to 12 points of sale at that location. As we move kind of into the concession space in the arena, this is something that we're currently under construction of. This is not the fanfare venue food app or map, so to speak, but this is something we are working on developing and putting into place. And I apologize if this is a little small on your screen, but essentially what this is going to be a map that consumers can see when they come in the building that really kind of highlights exactly where each different food and beverage offering is located within the arena itself. Big thing for us is not duplicating stands where we have isolated and individual stands with specific concession offerings, as well as specific beverage offerings throughout the arena. So what you'll see in our facility, in our map, again, this is just a template off of a different facility, but what you'll see on our map is the craft beer garden, which is a Happy Basset craft beer garden, right? So that'll indicate on that map kind of where you are and how to get yourself over to the craft beer garden. The Prairie Band End Zone Bar, some of the food concepts that we're going to be rolling out, like Top City or Topeka Sausage Company, the All-American Smokehouse Barbecue Station, the Little Taqueria, kind of street taco and walking taco location, We are looking at bringing in another concept, which is more of a chili concept, in a nod and an ode to old Perubsky's chili, and being able to offer bowls of chili, anything that has chili on it, right? So, native tacos, bowls of chili, Frito chili pie, chili-covered baked potatoes, chili-covered, hot dogs, and those types of things. But I wanted to kind of touch base on those a little bit more in detail. So this is kind of the concept rollout for the All-American Smokehouse Barbecue stand. That name is still being workshopped a little bit. I think we'll change it, make it a little bit more specific to our market, a little bit more individual, and hopefully bring that concept in. And that will serve things like pulled pork sandwiches, chopped brisket sandwiches, barbecue pulled pork nachos, things of that nature, where these stands are specifically dedicated to that type of fanfare food item. And these are some of the menu offerings. Again, brisket sandwiches, pulled pork sandwiches, barbecue nachos, barbecue mac and cheese bowls, and then as we look at Topeka Sausage Company, beer cheese dogs, bratwurst with sauerkraut, Italian chicken sausage, spicy Polish sausage, as well as, just regular old hot dogs. The little taqueria stand, which is one that I'm most excited about, it has street tacos, 3 different types of street tacos, as well as walking nachos. So if you don't know what walking nachos are, those are basically just a bag of Doritos with some nacho meat inside, or taco meat inside, and then all your fixings on top that you eat with a spoon or a fork. So those are really convenient and easy for our audience and our patronage that come to the facility, and makes the experience a little bit more enjoyable. Some of these concepts will be toying with and rolling out in the future, whether it be on a fixed location on the concourse and in the concession stands, or through a portable sales location, which you'll see a concept of that portable sales location as we roll back through the presentation here. But those include that chili concept I was talking about, a comfort kitchen, which is a little bit more, like shrimp po' boys and catfish sandwiches and things like that. And then this is a concept that we'll be rolling out. We hope to do one by the end of this year. If we're not able to do one by the end of this year, we're hoping to get that rolled out in 2024. This is a grab-and-go concept. It's worked very well throughout many different facilities in our industry. It especially works very well for things like just quick grab-and-go items where you're not having to spend a lot of time waiting in line and going through the full concession scale out. So this will come with things like, full refrigerated sections with alcoholic and non-alcoholic drinks. It'll come with full refrigerated sections for food, so prepackaged salads, sandwiches, meat and cheese snacks, things of that nature, and then chips and snacks that are not refrigerated on the exterior walls. And these are self-pay operations from the patrons that pay as they go in and grab their items and then come out. It helps us because we can isolate 2 of these right next to each other, where we can have one attendant working between both. So this is a really fun concept and something that you've kind of seen throughout the marketplace a little bit. I don't know if they have any at Arrowhead or Kaufman, but I do know they have them at the airport, KCI. So if you've been there, or MCI, and seen this concept, it's very similar. And some of the pay processing side of things is going to be similar as well. We're still workshopping a little bit on how that is going to work, but again, we hope to have one of these rolled out by the end of 2023, if not into early 2024. This is just uniform stuff, so let's go back up to some of these portable concept solutions. So this is what would be considered a portable sales location. It comes with all the different elements that we'll need to provide a portable food and beverage service, whether that be inside Exhibition Hall, in one of our alcoves on the concourse and Landon Arena, or really anywhere we need to place that. We can place these down on the floor in Landon Arena if we're doing floor events like boxing or MMA, where we need floor sales locations. Just adds a little bit to the aesthetic, but also it allows us to expand on the offerings down on the floor. So patrons who are seated on the floor don't have to go all the way back up to the concourse level to get food and beverage offerings. Obviously, if they really want the barbecue nachos, they're going to have to go back up to the concourse to do that. But we'll have some of these concepts being able to roll out and make it a little bit more convenient for consumers and patrons wherever they're located in the facility. The other big expansion in the food and beverage space is the catering. So we actually launched our catering on January the 8th with the Laura Kelly's Kansas Governor's Ball. That was 8 days after we took over management of the food and beverage space. And catering is a big piece of business that we foresee coming into this year and into years to come. The catering specifics, there's a full catering menu. I did not bring that here with me today to present to you. That's another 36-pager that I don't know that we have time for. But there are some elements in this presentation that kind of tie into those catering offerings. One of the things we really pride ourselves on is the ability to add enhancements to those catering offerings. So just taking a traditional, buffet catering type space or a plated catering type space and really elevate it with things like sushi and sake tastings, wine and cheese pairings, charcuterie board pairings, beer and beer and cheese pairings, things of that nature that add a level of experience to the catering piece that goes just beyond getting your food at the buffet and bringing in a little bit more excitement to that space. So we'll go over a couple of those. Oh, I forgot bartender and cocktail mixology training. So that's kind of a fun one. I know when we were running through this as a workshop team with our staff and our corporate staff, we worked through this extensively for a number of months, and we shared it with our family members that we work with and tried to gauge their feedback on what they would like to see. We shared it with partners of the building. We shared it with friends of the building. And some of the things that got the most hype were these ones here. So craft beer and charcuterie. We kind of touched on that a little bit. The sushi and sake pairings, which again is an elevated and fun experience that goes beyond the catering itself. And then I think this was the overall winner for most everybody was the wine and pairing concept. So those are things that customers that are doing weddings, that are doing banquets, that are doing any kind of event that would utilize a full banquet style catering would have the opportunity to add these enhancements onto their package and truly elevate that level of service throughout the facility. Some of the other things we're working through is transitioning a lot of our small wares and takeaway wares for our consumers to more earth-friendly components, so disposable, bamboo plates and anything that is a little bit more sustainable, and certainly something that has a little bit less impact on our greenhouse gas emissions throughout the facility. So we'll be rolling out recycling programs. We'll be bringing in some of these items for both catering and concessions that help us reduce our carbon footprint at the building, but also create a fun way to enjoy your food. These are some flex retail stands. These are some concepts that we're working through again with different areas around the facility, primarily in Exhibition Hall, which would be a dual source stand, right? So you have half the stand as the urban market and then half the stand as maybe a different concept, like an Asian fusion concept or a Mexican food concept or something thereabouts. So you have multiple offerings out throughout one stand. That's about what I had on food and beverage at this time. Do you have any questions on that before I start jumping around into other areas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Of these that you've listed out, are they all going to be independently operated? The Landon Arena, the Exhibition Hall, are these all independently operated booths? Are these all within the OVG 360 umbrella? And then you're staffing them, or are they local companies? Well, how's this all going to work?
Yeah, so all of these concepts are our concepts. They're concepts created by our chefs, our food and beverage GMs. They will be operated, managed, and staffed out of OVG's staff. So these are concepts that we've dreamt up to help, again, diversify the offerings at the space, but also create a little more personalized look and feel. So the Topeka Sausage Company is essentially just a branded name that we've developed to come up with a fun concept that is unique to our space and operated under our OVG 360 umbrella.
Okay. I didn't know if you were going to outreach to local
Yeah.
restaurants and businesses to say, if you want to have Doughboys Pizza, for
Yep.
example, and they would have a whole booth that would be their booth at the concessions.
Correct. We're still working on that partnership specifically with Doughboys. We're hopeful that comes on board midsummer into 2023, but all the other concepts will be concepts under the OVG family. But and speaking of Doughboys in particular, that is one we've been working on for about a year now, and getting a partnership that makes sense not only for them but for us as well, and offers their products and services throughout the facility in a fixed location in Landon Arena, where they can serve their Doughboys pizza, their proprietary offerings, and consumers that are familiar with Topeka and maybe like Doughboys, that gives them an opportunity to have that product inside our space.
Sure. The two that you have up right now, the Heritage Deli and the Urban Fusion, you said those were an exhibition hall?
So Heritage Deli will be the concept moving into Heritage Hall. That will change a little bit over time. We like to kind of change the menus based on the needs of the event, right? So a fried chicken and burgers and French fries stand doesn't really work well with things like Kansas Kids Wrestling, right? So kind of changing that concept as we roll into different events. But yes, this is the concept that we're looking at for Exhibition Hall.
Okay. So those would not be operational during a concert per se?
No, but some of the offerings from that specific stand might be offered in the concession stands up in Landon Arena in different locations. Primarily for Heritage Deli offerings, we're probably looking at implementing those pieces in the grab-and-go markets, which are those alcoves that are self-pay for the patrons, which have those offerings, similar offerings to the Heritage Deli.
That's all.
Kellen,
Yep.
with all these added things to the menu and everything, is it going to require a change in the kind of the infrastructure of our concession areas? And if so, what's that going to look like?
Yes, a lot of this will require change in our infrastructure, and part of our presentation and award of the bid was a significant capital contribution from OVG directly to the county to help transition in some of those pieces of infrastructure. That capital amount was $600,000. $400,000 of that is going in this year with everything from catering wares to small wares to cookwares that are needed to actually support the catering infrastructure. And then other items are things like you saw with the flex retail space locations, which are the portable sales locations that we can purchase and implement into our catering and food and beverage programs. So yes, there's a lot of infrastructure. The grab-and-go markets will take up some of that infrastructure as well, and then the build-outs of some of those concession stands. But for the most part, excuse me, on the concession spaces in Landon Arena, a lot of that really big and significant infrastructure, a lot of the high price infrastructure was touched on during the renovation. So we've got a lot of that really core infrastructure that's needed to support these types of services already done as part of the renovation. So things like fryer banks and griddles and fire suppression hood systems to walk-in fridges and freezers to expanding upon that space a little bit and then making that space a little bit easier to work around and more efficient to work out of. So a lot of that has been done, but there's still work to be done, yes.
So, all of these sound fantastic. However, I have 2 young boys.
Sure.
Are there still going to be hot dogs and popcorn and nachos?
Yes, there are. I'll show you that kind of concept here real quick. We will have just your regular classic concession offerings. That's going to be this fresh classic concept. This will go at that new northeast stand, which is part of the expansion of the renovation project. That fresh classic stand will be your traditional concession fare. So things like burgers, chicken sandwiches, fried chicken tenders, fries. Hot dogs will be served out of there as well as nachos. But, if you're looking to expand upon that, and mom and dad want something a little different from, your son or daughter, then these other concepts are where we really try and highlight that.
Mr. Chairman? Yes. What about your staffing and staffing issues? Those seem like we have staffing issues across every industry, from the trained to the untrained, and you're going to have a lot of booths that are not open 24/7 or 7 days a week or even 5 days a week.
Sure.
So you're going to have a lot of influx, outflux. How are you going to get people in, trained, ready to go, and so that they know kind of what they're doing? Yeah, so staffing is a challenge, right? Especially with our industry where, your time between events is so fluctuative. The good news is we work with a number of third-party contracting companies that are specific to food and beverage staffing operations. So we saw a pretty sizable amount of those employees that came from two separate organizations, as well as some MPOs when we did the catering for the Kansas Governor's Ball. We were able to utilize third-party staffing contract companies that are specific to the food and beverage space. And those provided just shy of about 60 employees during that catering event, but we will utilize those same companies in the concession stands and any other areas of our food and beverage service program. The other piece is, working to bolster up our payroll staff on the food and beverage side. So part-time and full-time staff that are on payroll, that know those spaces, that work those spaces day in and day out. So they're very familiar with them. Because that's the other piece that you need when you're working with third-party contracted services, is if you don't have somebody that's familiar with that space, it's not going to work and run and operate as efficiently as it could. And that's a big focus of our team right now. We've came in with staffing support, not only what we've hired so far, but the staffing support as a company, regional VPs that have been in town for weeks at a time. We still have 2 traveling GMs who have been with us since January 8th, who will be with us through the end of this month, and one of those will actually be with us into early March, to really help develop the core staffing concept as well as the working concepts around our food and beverage operations. So there's a lot that goes into it, but we feel confident that we've found the areas that we need to help support that staffing infrastructure.
Kellen, over at the Dahmer.
Yeah.
With the facility with all the horses and agricultural animals and everything.
Sure.
Are you going to be doing concessions in that building as well?
We will, yeah. So we have a cafe in there that was lightly touched during the renovation process. That will continue to get a little bit more of an expanded upgrade, as well as a new concept menu development out of that space as well. Pepsi is our pouring rights and advertising partner from the soda perspective, and that is a branding piece for them. So they are actually coming up with new signage for that space, because that's a contractually provided space to them in their contract, to really help kind of dress that space up a little bit, give it a new facelift, and create an experience that's identical to Landon Arena Exhibition Hall for our equine and livestock community and the events that they produce in Domer Arena.
Kind of getting off script here a little bit. I
Yeah.
want to talk about parking.
Sure.
You've kind of switched over to doing online parking. How is that working? And have you had any snags with that?
Yeah, short answer, yes, it's it's challenging. We have rolled out 2 new pieces of infrastructure for our parking services at the facility, Park Hub and Park Mobile. So in the event that we have events that we're not able to add the parking fee or the parking paid for parking service on the ticket, we have the ability to do that and roll that out with technology infrastructure out in the lot. So patrons can either pay in advance when they buy their ticket, and they will get a QR code that they just show our parking lot operators, and they scan that, and then they get their parking ticket and go in. They'll also have the ability to pay for parking out in the lot. We are trying to move towards a cashless system for the paid for parking, so that allows customers to pay either using credit cards, debit cards, Apple Pay, Mobile Pay, or Android Pay, or any other online payment platform. We haven't quite got to Bitcoin and Venmo and PayPal and all that fun stuff yet, but there's certainly lots of ways that our patrons can support their payment for parking services. What we like to do, and what my preferred method is to add some of those parking fees into the ticketing convenience fees, so that way, one, it really increases the amount of traffic flow that we can do in the parking lot, where we're not having areas where we have backed up traffic. We see it all the time when we go to things like Chiefs games or Royals games. You're waiting in these lines to get through the parking services. We try and alleviate that as much as possible by finding creative ways to add those parking fees elsewhere. So that way patrons, when they arrive, they can just drive right into the lot, find a parking spot, and come right into the building. So yes, there are snags. It does slow up the process when we have to utilize those mobile parking services for pay in the lot. We try and avoid that as much as possible, but there are times where we have to use that. There are specific, contractual obligations with artists that won't allow us to put those parking fees elsewhere, but pay in the lot. So, there are snags, but we try and work around that as best we can.
Are you getting any feedback from people from like the farm show and things like that? Do they like the new setup?
Sure.
I know in the past they kind of used the arena and the exhibition area, but now it's pretty much in one building. They like that setup. But
yeah, I think most of our partners that we've worked with over the past year since we've rolled out the renovation, having that expanded space in the exhibition hall is a true benefit to them. They also have a third area of access into the facility. One of the big pieces of that is on the north end. We have a overhead bay door, which is wider than any door we've ever had, so we can get those large pieces of equipment in the building with much less headache, but also it allows us to grow these events. It allows us to expand these events over time. Speaking of some of the events that utilize that expanded area of service, the demolition derbies, the arena cross events, which are utilizing both spaces at a time, right? They're utilizing exhibition hall and Landon Arena for the performance of their events. It gives them a lot more space. It allows them to operate their events more efficiently, and certainly gives them more flexibility for layouts and programming in those spaces. For our banquet and catering events, it allows us to grow those events as well. If you were familiar with the previous Governor's Ball, we had to split that event between Exhibition Hall and Landon Arena. The last time they were in the building, we had an overflow into Landon Arena where they would get the video broadcast of the ceremony taking place on the end wall video displays. Having that extra 40,000, 35,000 square feet in Exhibition Hall allows us to contain those events into one space, truly making it a better production for those events taking place, and allows them to grow as well. So things like the 2030 Gala, where we can now expand to 100 more tables or 50 more tables, allows those events to generate additional revenues and provide a better service to their customers as they're coming as well.
all right. What about are we ready to move on to the? Okay. What about our advisory board? There's been some changes to the bylaws and.
Yeah, all great changes in our opinion. Our board works very closely with us and our full-time staff. They've provided not only the insight, but the critical feedback that we always need at times to help us expand and better our operation. There's elements within our advisory board that we're rolling out this year, which is new for the first time, which is a credentialing system that allows our advisory board members as well as our county commissioners and elected officials to come into the facility and experience the event as a patron, but also go through those areas of, parking to ticketing at the box office to going through our security checkpoint forms and using these self-service ticket scanning pedestals and going into the concession stands to really get a true experience of what that operation and that event is like from all aspects of the business, right? So the feedback that we get from those types of access and those types of areas within the business really help us perform better, help us find where we're having shortfalls, help us find where we can, find more efficient ways to tackle those systems, much to the display of, what we're just talking about on the parking lot. Having that type of critical feedback is what we need to help make our event operation better. It's what we need to help make our staff operation better, and hopefully, at the end of the day, it's all areas that we utilize to put into place to make the patron experience and the customer experience that much better as folks are coming to the facility. Some of the bylaws and changes I think one of the advisory board members said it in our last board meeting, and Jim, I know, touched on it when he was given an update on the advisory board resolution that was changing, is a lot of times our industry is extremely complex and it's tough to navigate, and it's quite tough to understand the finances and the operation and the deal points of these contracts and how they make sense, that a lot of our board members, as they're getting towards the end of their second terms, when they're really starting to grasp the concepts of how these events work and how the facility generates revenue and offsetting some of those expenses. It takes time to learn that, and as they're learning that, oftentimes they're getting ready to exit their term. So adding that third term in really helps, we believe helps us, and certainly helps their understanding as advisory board members that report back to you. I don't know, Jim, if you wanted to touch on anything more on the advisory board.
I would just say, this is Jim Krause, Shawnee County Councilor. I would just say that the changes to the resolution that specifically define the areas of oversight, there are 5 or 6 of them that the board will specifically do. Each line, it was sort of interesting to me when we went through that process with the advisory board. They looked at every word. They looked at what it said, what it meant, what they wanted it to say, what their oversight role was going to be with regard to operations, with regard to the budget, with regard to the annual goals. And so we've got a group of people that are really serious about doing what they can to provide assistance to the management team on now both not only managing the facility, but the food and beverage operation at the facility. So we think we've got a good setup, a setup that the advisory board wants, a setup that the commission would like to see, a setup that works with you as well. So I think those changes were long overdue, and they more mirror actually how the board functions now rather than the original concept of the advisory board way back in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you, Jim. All right, any other questions concerning the advisory board?
That's I can think of.
Okay. Upcoming events. What's
Yeah.
new?
Jumping into the event category, I'll talk about the upcoming events here in a second, but I did want to talk about all the offers we have out that are pending. Obviously not talking about which artists they are. Sorry, everybody. Can't give you all that information. But the sheer number of events that we are working on, right? So we have 9 offers that have went in so far for events in 2023. These are all new event offers. These are not our reoccurring events like demo derbies and arena crosses and, the circus and home and garden shows and things of that nature. These are all new event offers. Of those 9 offers that have went in so far, we are submitting an additional 10th offer this week. 3 of those offers are country shows. 2 of those offers are classic rock shows. 1 of those offers is a top 40 and pop type artist. And then 2 of those offers are professional sports. And 1 of those offers is a family show. We are currently working 7 different offers that are in progress, yet to be submitted. And out of those offers that we have submitted for this year, we have confirmed a couple of those, 1 of which I can share, or 2 of which I can share, 1 of which is not yet announced. But Showtime Boxing is a really exciting one that's coming up next weekend. And that event in particular is so exciting because that's an event that is broadcast live from Topeka out of our facility, live on Showtime Network. So Showtime Boxing and HBO Boxing are the 2 leading professional boxing organizations in the country. And being able to secure an event like that for our facility and for our community and for our state is certainly something that we're very excited about, that highlights not only our facility but the professional sports aspect of bringing professional sports to Topeka and Shawnee County. We have another professional sporting event that will be announced in the next couple of weeks. That is another event that will be broadcast live on ESPN. Not only ESPN, it will have tapecast reruns on CBS Sports Network as well. And that event is another, again, just a really exciting piece of business, and being able to contract 2 pieces of business in the same calendar year that put our facility, Shawnee County and Topeka, on the map in a professional sports world is something that I'm really excited about, and I hope our community is just as excited about as they learn this second event. The concert that we have confirmed and announced and went on sale with is Foreigner. We've talked a little bit about that one over the past couple of months, but that event is May 2nd, and the ticket sales for that event are going extremely well. We're over 65% sold so far, and we have until May 2nd till the show wraps up. So that is obviously a very engaging piece of business, an exciting piece of business for our community members who have already bought tickets, and those patrons that are coming from outside the community as well. We typically see a lot of our event sales and our ticket sales for events, especially on the live event space, taking place the week prior to the event. So being able to see a large majority of our ticket sales already sold in a pre-sale effort is exciting for us to see. So that shows us that the event is very popular and that folks are excited to see it. So we're excited about that. We did have 1 very large country artist that we did not get. We made 2 efforts to go after this artist, submitted 2 separate times, and unfortunately we did not get that one. We have another very large country artist that we are working on at the moment that we hope to contract for the summer months, and right now that's looking good. That offer will go in this week. Happy to touch on any of those other offers without telling you exactly who they are.
Kellen, when you're going
Yeah.
through the process of the bids and the offers, are you working with OVG 360? Are you reaching out independently to the artists? Are you working through central booking agencies? What's kind of the process of, or do you just say, I like this artist, and so this is what I want to see, and so we're building a schedule around what Kellen likes?
All the above. Every scenario you put in place is how we go about contracting events. A lot of it is working directly with our agency representatives. So I work very closely with 2 specific agencies that are represented out of LA and Nashville. We work very closely on 3 separate calls throughout the month with our internal OVG teams. We have a regional team, we have a national team, and then we have a national team that's specific to our size of facility. So we work in conjunction not only with our company resources, but our direct contacts and communications with agencies, and then we also work with specific promoter groups. So the Foreigner event is, I think why I'm most excited about Foreigner is that is a brand new promoter that has never worked in the facility before. So we've come in partnership with that promoter to bring this event to Topeka and Shawnee County. That event is doing wildly successful at the moment, and what that means for us moving forward is more promoter partnered opportunities with this specific promoter group to bring more of that live concert content into the facility. This promoter in particular strictly only deals with concerts, not just country concerts, kind of every broad spectrum, classic rock, top 40, indie, really anything that, I hate to say it this way, but anything that makes money, they work with. And that's an exciting proposition and an exciting piece of business. It's taken us a few years to get some of these promoters back on board, comfortable with our market, comfortable with the ticket sales that we can do out of the facility, and having the ability to secure a partnership with that promoter is exciting for us for the future. Most of the other offers that we have here, Showtime Boxing is that event was contracted through a coordinated effort through our corporate office, our regional teams, and some of our buildings who had worked with this specific group and promoter group in the past. This also opens up the doors for us to work with that promoter again in the future. They primarily deal in the live event space with sporting activity or family show engagement activity. So not a whole lot on the concert realm, but more, spectacle type shows, things like, Nitro Circus and boxing and MMA and some of the family show content, like the Disney Lives of the world. However, when we're working with Disney and or Monster Jam, we work direct with companies that manage those services. It's a company called Feld Promotions. They're based out of Florida, and they own the broadcasting and commercial rights to all the Disney content. So there's a lot of different ways that we go out and solicit business for these types of events. There's a lot of different relationships that are built to secure this type of business and the different types of show offerings that come to our facility. One of the things that I'm really working closely on for this year is diversification of our event mix. So what that means is not all country shows, not all classic rock shows, but having country shows, classic rock shows, family shows, professional sporting events, but also bringing in heritage events. So our team right now is working on an in-house event concept for the Spanish and Mexican community. So bringing in, either mariachi bands or something to that effect, where we can have a specific segment of concert business that is, quite frankly, been underutilized in our community in the past. So diversifying that event mix, trying to bring in something for everyone, not just the country and classic rock fans in our marketplace. But I will say country and classic rock tend to do very well, so those are always areas of focus in our business mix.
Have you seen an uptick in over at the Dahmer with horse shows and team roping, et cetera?
Yeah, we have. We've seen, we contracted a new piece of business last year, which was I'll probably get this wrong because this is not my area of expertise. We have someone who deals with this specifically. But the Cutting Horse Association, they came in for the first time. The cutting horses are the horses you see on the TV show Yellowstone. They're performance horses that help wrangle in cows and calves and get them in their locations that they're supposed to be for cowboying and ranch handing, I guess. But those shows in particular are very exciting to the public because it's a pretty niche and unique type of event in that equine and livestock world. We have seen an uptick there. We are bringing them back. Obviously, the United Rodeo Association, they do their professional rodeo with us in early November every year. So that show is continuing to grow in popularity. We have lost one piece of equine business. We lost the Professional Armed Forces Rodeo. They went out to bid we submitted a 3-year bid offering for that event, and unfortunately we lost out to a facility in New Mexico on that one. So that one won't be coming back. We hosted their event for what was supposed to be 3 years. We had a COVID year in there, so we really only got 2 years out of that event as we contracted that one. But we are starting to see a little bit more growth and expansion and development in some of those events. The barrel bash or the barrel racing events seem to be wildly popular. The team roping events are always popular. Really what we look for in the equine and livestock world is longer term events. So what we mean by that is less of the Thursday through Sunday event and more of a 2-week showing. Events that might be more specific to jumping or showing as opposed to racing and team roping competition. That does 2 things for us. It allows us to utilize more stalling nights, more RV nights, and then allows those event producers to also generate more money on their participation funds and their participation fees throughout those events. So twofold on what our strategy is for moving forward on those events. That doesn't mean we won't do all those weekend events, because those are popular events and we try and do those as much as possible. But our Domer and Livestock facility has traditionally been booked all but 5 to 6 weekends out of the year. So it's a consistent line of business, and there's always a desire to have those events in the facility and in the space, and that'll be a continued effort moving forward.
Mr. Chairman? Yes. Kellen, when we talk about bookings, Topeka always likes to talk about the glory years of
Sure.
1988, 89, 90, 91, when Topeka was really the center of big acts. It was pre-Sprint, so there wasn't
Sure.
a Sprint Center. There wasn't a lot of the venues that we have in Kansas City now. And so Topeka was really the opener for a lot of big concerts during that.
Sure.
And so you have people that will look back on those glory years and say, why
What
can't we
happened?
have that anymore?
Yeah.
And so, and I know that, Topeka, the Expo Center, as it was known, had kind of fallen, not bad, but it was just not in its prime.
Sure.
And so now with the renovation, the facility really looks good
Yeah.
and back to what it was, but we need to get the people in. And
Sure.
so I know the promoters, they're worried about, well, if you're not gonna sell the tickets, why am I gonna bring the act? And we have people that say, well, I remember when the Expo Center used to be really something special, but then it wasn't so great, because there was other places that got better and it just didn't keep pace. So getting people back in the facility seems to be one of the key parts of the bookings.
Yes.
And so I hate to even say it, but just for the sake, again, of us a work session and just throwing out everything that we can, do we have an obligation as a county commission to maybe even consider supplementing or somehow offsetting some of the cost of tickets to lower the ticket price just to get people back in the facility? So where the people will have a positive experience and get them back into the idea that this is a positive place to go.
Sure. Yeah. I think there's 2 approaches to that, right? One, what we saw last year was the extreme competition in the marketplace, and just kind of touching on your first comment about how the facility used to be the flagship, if you will, in the region and in the state. You mentioned it. That was pre-Sprint Center. That was pre-Intrust Arena. That was pre a lot of these acts in the industry changing to go more, casino-based. And those are more of your heritage artists and things of that nature that are performing that way. So the competition and the business model and the industry as a whole has changed, right? So I think looking at how we are approaching the event contracting and the bookings themselves is we've had to modify our business model. We've had to adjust and we've had to adapt. And part of that adaptation is, taking a little bit more risk, going out after some big shows and putting, some of those, financial liabilities and that risk on the line to go out and contract some of these events. That has been something that has been a focus of us for about the last year, and certainly a very keen focus for us moving into 2023. We've taken some big risks. We've got an offer out right now for a top 40 and pop artist that we feel would be wildly successful if we can get that show to contract. We've been working on that show for the past probably 6-7 months, and it's still not done yet. These shows, they take a long time to develop, to refine their routing schedules, and ultimately to get to contract. There's events that we've been working on since I've gotten here in mid 2017, and since our contract really started in September of 2017. There are events that we've been working to contract, since that time, and we're still working on them. It's just part of our industry and part of the challenge. I think the big piece is, having the flexibility to take a bit more risk, having the support of you three commissioners and the support of our community to take a bit more risk, to bring in some of these artists that would be, reminiscent of the glory days, if you will. So those are efforts that are currently underway, and those are things that we're really excited, potentially have the opportunity to get to contract. And those are pieces of business that I think really changed the landscape of our specific location at the Stormont Vale Event Center, and really changed the landscape of our community and our patronage, right? I think you've kind of seen it in some of the aspects of the events that have already come to the community with the Heartland Stampede. As much as it pains me that we compete for content with Heartland Stampede, the underlying piece that I think is most opportunistic from that is that Heartland Stampede is successful, right? And those events perform well, and the community shows up, and we drive in traffic that show up for that event. Now, that doesn't really mean a whole lot for our facility during that event, but what it does mean is that the promoters, the agencies, the artist management groups that work with those artists see that Topeka can perform on a national scale for ticket sales, can see that Topeka has a hunger and an appetite to bring that type of content into the market. So that does help us, as well as the ability to take a bit more risk.
I guess real quick, just as a worry, if a casino brings in an act,
Yeah.
they can price us out to where they're offering a ticket at $50.
Yeah.
That if we had had the same act, we would have had to charge $75.
Sure.
Again, the casino cares less about the profit or loss of a concert. They want people to be in their facility.
Correct.
And so do we have to maybe at some point take a look at that and a harder look to say, what can we do as a county to maybe offset some of those ticket prices? Again, what's it going to take to get people to click?
Yeah. I'm going to choose my response very carefully because the casino is a great partner of ours, and we certainly support their business and love their partnership at the facility. But you're right, their business model is wildly different than ours, right? So their business model is more about patronage and attendance at the casino and hotel night stays. Our business model is about ticket sales and concession sales and generating the revenue off those ticket sales and concession sales and parking fees and things of that nature to support the financial betterment of those events. So yes, their model is quite different than ours, probably polar opposite if you think about it. But we're open to any ideas that you think are going to be best fit. One thing I will say is we put a pretty big focus as well in generating additional ancillary revenues through sponsorship activation and sponsorship opportunity for these events to help offset, again, some of those costs, offset some of those liabilities that allow us to reduce the ticket price and keep that average ticket price lower. You know, on one of these concerts, and that's important to the artists and the artist management groups as well. You know, on the big artists that we were working with, you know, their average ticket price was $65 on an artist that was about $550,000 of guarantee. So essentially what that means is the artist cost over $500,000 to bring into the facility, yet the average ticket price that they would allow could not exceed $65. So what that means is, you know, they're really wanting to keep tickets affordable for patrons, and you see it with lots of artists. Eric Church is a prime example, where their average ticket price, and he will have a ticket price mandated that does not exceed a certain amount, right? Whether that's an entry-level ticket that doesn't exceed $25 to a patron. Now, is it going to be the best seat? Probably not. But is it an opportunity to see him live in concert for $25? Yeah, I mean, that's the concept, right? So a lot of these artists are moving towards that average ticket price as part of their contracting, to where they know that the fans that want to go see them can see them at an affordable rate. You know, so that's not only important to us to get consumers and patrons into the facility, but it's also important to the artists. So to your point, yes, I think there are certain ways that we can go about and helping support and underwrite some of those opportunities that we're able to get into the building. But I think the first motivational factor is getting those events to contract. So that way, then we can have those conversations on the back end to see if that's something that A, we need to do, and B, that would help our patronage in getting folks in the building.
Commissioner Mays?
Kellen, I got a whole bunch of questions.
Yeah, shoot.
So, kind of to piggyback off what Commissioner Cook had said about the glory days, it seemed like it used to be that we weren't so much a stop on a tour, but like our facility was largely unused on weekdays, and a tour might come here and like rehearse for a week before they kicked off their tour. It was kind of a staging. They could practice loading in and out and everything like that. Do tours still do that?
They do. They do. And a lot of it is not really strategic to the building or the market in particular. A lot of it is strategic into where's the band located, right? And where do they want to kick off their tour? And touring and routing has changed so much over the last decade or 2 decades that a lot of tours are breaking into 2 separate tours. They'll have a spring tour, and then they'll have a fall winter tour, and it just depends, right? I think a lot of that does take place. We have had the ability to get some of that in the past couple of years, although not as glamorous and sexy. We had a rehearsal week for Paw Patrol and then kicked off their tour, right? So, I mean, we still have that, but...
We'll take it. I mean, it's not Aerosmith.
Yeah,
but,
it's not Aerosmith. It's not quite as glamorous. However, that does still happen. I think a lot of it comes down, quite frankly, to where is the tour starting, where is their routing starting, and kind of where does their routing end up in that respect.
Okay, it just seems like it's something that, it's a lot cheaper to rent Stormont Vale Event Center than it is Madison Square Garden. And
Absolutely.
So, I mean, it seems like maybe somewhere we could look. I did have a question about Ticketmaster. I know there's been a lot of controversy with Ticketmaster. I know we use Ticketmaster. Is that an OVG company-wide decision, or is that a Stormont Vale Event Center decision?
Kind of all the above. We look at how the contract deal points best benefit not only our patronage, but our revenues as well. Although, Ticketmaster gets the majority of those fees. We do get a small share. But yeah, I mean, I think the large contracts are negotiated at a national level and then rolled out down the line, which, if it's Ticketmaster, if it's Access Tickets, if it's Tickets Now, if it's Tixer, they're all in it for the same reason, right? So they're a for-profit business that is going to generate revenues off selling live event entertainment tickets. And, Ticketmaster, in my opinion, has the most robust platform, has the most brandability, has the best opportunity for us to perform both financially and from a brand awareness perspective for patrons. Does Ticketmaster have the best reputation right now? Probably not, especially if you're a Taylor Swift fan. But that's just the nature of the business, and Ticketmaster is kind of the big player in the game. And for us, our fees are relatively nominal. Our fees are always going to be lower than the Sprint Centers of the world, or the Madison Square Gardens, if you will. We try and keep those fees as affordable for our patrons as we possibly can, but still remain within the parameters of those contracts.
Okay. Also, wanted to talk about in-house content
Yeah.
that we create here, wing flaying and the like.
Yeah.
I guess, can you kind of talk a little bit about the process of choosing what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, who's going to be in charge, and that type of thing?
Sure. So a lot of these are workshopped in our full-time staff team. Wing Fling and Pig and Pour. Pig and Pour is only a few years old. Wing Fling, I think, just finished our 6th year. Maybe it was our 7th year of producing Wing Fling. A lot of these are concepts that we draw up that we see success with in the industry at maybe other facilities, but a lot of them are drawn up for, what's underserved in the marketplace, right? So Haunted House is a big one. That's one we launched 2 years ago, kind of on a whim to give an opportunity for our community to have an experience like that during COVID. And tried to make it as COVID-friendly as possible. After that first year, we saw a lot of feedback from that event, and that folks wanted to bring that back. And we went, we dove in head first. And so last year, we produced Nightmare on the Boulevard for 3 weeks in November in Exhibition Hall, and it did extremely well. And that's a concept that we'll continue to roll moving forward. This year, it's going to be 4 weeks. But that comes in partnership with a group called Jinxed Productions. They're based out of, Branson, Missouri, I believe, is where they're actually based out of. But Adam Jinx, who is the lead promoter and owner of that company, is actually from Topeka. So having the ability to bring something like that to our local community and to our facility was really something that we saw a need for. There wasn't really a big indoor haunt in Topeka, so having the space and the ability to do that allowed us to kind of dream up that concept, give it a couple years of trial run, and then really kind of go head first in the deep end. And thankfully it worked very well. Financially, it performed very well, and we're already working on areas to expand that, make it larger, make it bigger, make it a little more appealing for our community. But some of these concepts are rolled out through the industry, whether it be our in-house event creation or another event that we've just kind of taken on to produce and make it our own. But some of it is workshopped locally. Wing Fling was Bree Bergeron's kind of dreamt up event, and she's done a fantastic job of making that event what it is today and expanding on that. We took that same concept and we brought in Pig and Pour. We haven't done that one since COVID, but that event will be coming back. We brought in last year the Red, White, and Blue Barbecue Festival, and that one's coming back in May. So there's areas that, with the barbecue festival that used to take place at Prairie Band every year, they since have dropped that event, and I think the closest one is Smoke in the Springs, I think is what it's called. But it's a ways away, and we certainly have a desire for barbecue competition and barbecue food-based events in our community. Most of the events that we dream up in-house are traditionally food-based events and or food and beverage-based events. They're fun, they're easy to produce, and they're exciting for the community, and they grow in popularity as years go on. So,
Are they profitable?
they are. Well, most of them are.
Most.
The Haunted House is profitable. Wing Fling is profitable. Pig and Pour was profitable. We did not produce profit on Red, White, and Blue Barbecue Festival last year, but that was a first-year event.
And we have
there's-
weather too.
And we had weather. We kind of got that event cut short. That was the very first year we actually had that, or very first event that we actually had to implement our emergency sheltering procedures. There was a tornado just southwest of the town, and, you know, obviously with a live event taking place, it becomes a little bit dangerous to do that, especially if part of your event is taking place outdoors in a parking lot. So bringing those community members in and those participants and patrons in the building was the first part of that.
Okay, so I'm gonna transition from in-house content to local content.
Yeah,
County fair is something that we contribute to.
yep.
And I know there were some big changes with the board, the makeup of the board at the fair board and whatnot. Were there changes this year that worked out? And are there additional changes for next year? I know we talked about trying to partner it with a bigger country act, maybe a ticketed event rather than a
Yep.
free event and things like that.
Correct, yes. The partnership, so that partnership developed and kind of changed for the most part last year. We did work on a live ticketed concert event for that event, or for the fair last year. It never came to fruition. The one concert contract that will be going in this week is specifically for that weekend. And we are very hopeful that we can land this one. It's a very big artist and a very exciting piece of business that ties directly into, you know, the fair and building that fair's success for years to come.
And
So,
when you put those bids in, do you tell them that this is tied to the county fair and we want it to be a bigger success because of that, or?
yeah, so last year we worked with their team specifically about the events that, about the concert content and the artists that we had a potential chance to get the contract for that. I haven't spoken with them yet on this one. This one just came across my, my desk on Friday, so I'm still working through that policy and procedure, but we will be contacting them this week to let them know of, you know, the type of artist. You know, obviously I can't give them all the information on who it is, but the type of artist and the type of draw that we would be looking at, and the specific date that takes place during the fair, to really add in and build upon the fair itself. I think 2 years ago, we really started to work with the fair in particular about growing the fair, about, you know, helping the fair become a little bit more of a traditional fair, right? Where you have concerts, where you potentially have, you know, a carnival in the parking lot, and making this a week-long fair event as opposed to just a local kind of community fair that's more integrated and involved and heavily favored towards 4-H and building and expanding on that. Still having all those key core pieces of the fair intact, but also making it a true destination event, not only for our local community, but for folks that might be coming from outside the community as well.
Okay, and then another locally produced event is the Tropics.
Yep.
Which start up here pretty soon.
They do.
Kind of speak about
Yeah.
how that's going.
Tropics are going great. We just took delivery of their field on Saturday, so the field is in the building. It's not rolled out yet, but it will be here in the next month. Their first home game actually just got contracted last week. It is their preseason home opener. It's Monday, March 13th, and that is the Monday of spring break, immediately following Kansas Kids Wrestling. Their events are going great. Their ticket sales are doing well. Their season ticket sales are going well. We just launched and went on sale with their single game tickets the week before last. And then we just added that March 13th game in last week as their official first home game home opener. So they'll play 6 games in our facility this season. I don't have all of them off the top of my head. I know the first one is March 13th. I believe the second home game is either March 25th or 26th. It's whatever that Saturday is on that weekend. And then they'll play all the way through the end of April and going into
And
June.
again, is it the same thing as last year where the tickets are significantly cheaper if you buy them at the box office? If you
Yes.
walk in and get them.
Everything is cheaper if you buy it at the box
Okay.
office. And that's not just our facility, that's anywhere. Pro tip for everybody in the crowd. If you're buying tickets and you don't want to pay all those lovely Ticketmaster fees, most box offices at event venues and facilities across the country, there are no ticketing fees if you buy them at the box office. So that is always the most affordable option for patrons to purchase their tickets, is buy them directly from the box office.
Okay, I'm gonna keep going.
Okay.
So, we had purchased curtains for the upper deck.
Yep.
Have those ever arrived?
So the trusses and the motors are installed. We are still utilizing curtains that are provided by the supplier, but they are not our specific curtains. Our specific curtains are still held up in customs and transportation to get here, but we do have upper balcony black masking curtains that are in the facility right now. They are not our size curtains, so they are about 25 feet short of the ceiling rigging grid, which is all the metal beams in the ceiling. Once we get our specific curtains in the facility, those will be hung on those trusses and motors that are installed and have been delivered, and those will go all the way up to the ceiling and really help with both the aesthetic as well as the acoustic.
Have they been used for an event yet? the
We
ones that are
have,
up?
yeah, we've
Okay.
used them for PAFRA, the Professional Armed Forces Rodeo. We use them for Sarah Evans. We used them for New Year's Eve Bowls. We use them for, we've used them for a number of events.
So you're saying I need
yeah.
to get in there more often for these events?
Yeah, obviously, if there's an event where we have the full upper balcony open, you will never see them, right? Because they will be removed from that trussing system, and those trusses will be sucked all the way up to the steel. So we do a number of events where we don't utilize those curtains. But for all of our half-house events, for the football games in particular, those events will be in place and will go all the way up to the ceiling and make it a more intimate space.
So one of the complaints about the event center for years has been the acoustics for
Yeah.
concerts. And
Yeah.
with the Sarah Evans concert, was it a noticeable difference?
Noticeably different. Not just Sarah Evans' concert. I think it's been just about every concert that we've produced since the renovation has taken place. And part of that is the tunability of the room, as well as the in-house audio upgrades that we've done as part of the renovation. The upper balcony masking curtains will only enhance the acoustics of the facility. It's a giant concrete building, so acoustics is tough to manage. Part of it, what you see also is, another great example is Alice Cooper. We had Alice Cooper last October. If you were at that show, and I'm not going to say their name, but the opening act, the acoustics on the opening act were much different than the acoustics of Alice's act in particular. And part of that is from, their bands have their own, what they call stage managers or sound managers and sound production technicians that work that specific performance, right? So if it's the opening act, they have their own crew and their own team. They come in, they do sound checks in the building, they tune to the space that they're supposed to be providing the show for, and then the opening act and then the main act do the same thing. One thing we saw with that show was Alice's sound check was about 4 hours, which is very different than most. Most of them are a half hour to an hour for their sound check. The opening act was about 30 minutes, and then Alice's sound check was 4 hours. If you went to that concert, one thing you'd probably notice is that Alice's sound sounded a whole lot better than the opening act. So part of it is how much they take into account, how much tuning they do, how much sound check they do, but also a lot of it is the upgrades to the acoustics in the facility.
Okay, and then I wanted to speak about Ag Hall and Heritage Hall. They're
Yeah.
two smaller venues that really didn't get touched during the renovations. I noticed last time I was in Heritage Hall, they still had the old Expo Center signage up with the green and purple colors and stuff. Is there anything going on with those at all?
Yeah, so we are looking at enhancements, especially in the CIP program for both Ag Hall and Heritage Hall. With that comes a significant amount of enhancements to those spaces to both beautify those spaces, renovate those spaces, make them more functional and efficient for events to take place in there, but also upgrading to deferred maintenance areas in those facilities. The HVAC system in Heritage Hall is going to need a refurbish in the next year or two. Ag Hall has some, it's a historical building, and it has some challenging issues that go along with historical buildings, whether it be electric, power, foundation support, roofing. We've done a lot of repairs to the roof at Ag Hall in particular. That was touched on during our roof renovation project, which took place last year. So that has been completely done. But, bringing those spaces a little bit more up to today's decade and making them a little bit more attractive and appealing for events to want to host their events there.
I have a question, and this may not be for you, it may be for Kurt. I don't know. There's a pile of asphalt millings out there to the south of the parking lot. What's the future plans for?
Makeshift roads for our dirt pile storage. Those asphalt millings we can lay down and tear up as we need to lay them down and tear them up to provide access for heavy machinery and equipment and dump trucks to get back to our dirt piles. We do a number of events a year that utilize dirt in Landon Arena. So what you'll often see is, one day there's just a whole bunch of piles back there, whether it's dirt or clay or asphalt millings, and then during the event, you'll see the asphalt millings laid down in a roadway, and then access for all that dirt storage to go into Landon Arena. So we do dirt for the demo derbies, for Arena Cross, for our New Year's Eve Extreme Bull Riding. We had done it for Professional Armed Forces Rodeo in the past, as well as a few other events that take place in there that would utilize dirt surface or dirt floor.
So, to follow up, the dirt piles are kind of right there on the main entrance off 21st Street in front of the weed department. Is there a better place to put those?
It's probably not a better place for a location.
I'm thinking from just a pure aesthetics,
Yeah.
it just kind of doesn't really belong there. I mean,
Sure.
and I'm thinking if at some point we put up some of those kind of hoop barns, like what
Yep.
KDOT uses for their salt mixture and whatnot like that.
Yep.
I mean, is there another location that's maybe a little more off the beaten path?
Probably not another location on property that would work for the amount of, footprint that we would need for that. We would love the ability to provide a covered dirt storage, both from an aesthetics perspective, but also from a shelf life of that dirt. Oftentimes when we're doing these events, they're in months where we get a lot of moisture, whether it's snow or rain or whatever it might be. It adds to the degradation of that material. And we oftentimes have to supply with additional new material to support that type of infrastructure needed for those events. But I think if we could come up with a concept for covered dirt storage, whether it be a hoop barn or something that we can tie in, they're not the prettiest of buildings, but they do serve an extreme purpose to restore and retain the shelf life and the integrity of that surface, but also provide an enhanced aesthetic appeal. Part of the challenge we have with that space is there's a retention pond that went in on that south side of the building, on that south parking lot, that we can't really touch. That is a retention and overflow pond for the Shunga Creek as part of the flood plan. So unfortunately, that's something we can't really move or change. But we would be 100% open, and I know our promoters would really like the opportunity to have those surfaces covered and protected from moisture.
Mr. Chair, may I add something?
Sure.
On that specific topic, we are limited somewhat because, as you know, as we learned during renovations, there's a floodplain that runs through there. So anything that we would do permanently in putting a permanent structure in place is going to have to comply with floodplain regulations in that area. And so we'll have to weigh the cost benefit of different locations in what we do if we ever get to the point where we want to move forward on some sort of covered facility for those materials.
I would love to move it, personally.
Betty's
just-
sitting over here looking at me, giving me a dirty look. Hey, we're not spending any more money.
I just don't know where it would feasibly fit in the footprint of the campus.
Okay, well, think about it.
Okay.
Any other questions? Kellen, you have anything else?
I don't think I have anything else. We're really excited about the boxing event. That's shaping up very well. Ticket sales are going well for that event. We're a little over 1,200 tickets out at the moment, which is exciting to see, that many tickets sold in advance. It's, like I said, it's not this coming weekend, but it's the following weekend. It's February 17th, I believe. And that's a fun one. And if you're not able to go, and not able to make it to the event, just tune into Showtime Network at 8 p.m. Central, and you'll see us there.
There's still some good tickets available.
There are still great tickets available. Yes, there's some floor tickets still available. The lower bowl tickets would be my preferred ticket if I were going to the event. And there's actually still, I think, 2 or 3 loge box tables still open as well. So yeah, there's still great tickets to the event. Jump on Ticketmaster if you want to look at the map, or just come to the box office if you want to save a little bit of money.
I was just sitting here trying to remember if my Foreigner music was vinyl or 8-track.
Yeah. Regardless, it's going to be a fun one. You can relive those old times.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming in here and
Absolutely. Thank you.
enlightening us. I guess we're adjourned. Thank
Do
you.
you want to do administrative communications?
Oh, yeah, I do have public comment on here, if any, I don't think there's anyone here, no one signed up anyway. Any administrative communications? Okay. All right,
We are actually adjourned.
so what?
So we're actually adjourned.
We are now actually adjourned, we can leave.
Yeah,